"Hey, Bradley," I called out, breaking the comfortable silence. The game on the TV was just white noise to me now, and I found myself absently spinning my beer bottle in my hand. "I think I'm going to swing by my parents' place, surprise them. Haven't seen them in a bit." Bradley glanced over at me from his recliner, his face set in that familiar half-smirk. "Still can't stay away, huh? Mama's boy to the end." I rolled my eyes and laughed, tossing a half-empty bag of chips at him. He ducked easily and chuckled. "Come on, it's not like that," I said. "Just been a while since I saw them. Thought it might be nice to drop by." Right, Bradley said, stretching his legs out and yawning. "What about Kathy? She cool with you ditching the day?" "Yes, she's fine," I replied, though even as I said it, I could feel a twinge of discomfort. "She went out with her friends earlier, said they were going shopping or something." Bradley raised an eyebrow, sensing my hesitation. "Everything good with you too?" I hesitated, then shrugged. "Yeah, I guess. I don't know. Lately things feel a little off, you know? We haven't been connecting like we used to. Maybe it's nothing." Bradley's face softened for a moment, the usual teasing gone. "You sure? If something's bugging you, man, you should talk to her. Better to nip that stuff in the bud before it gets worse." I nodded, but my mind was already elsewhere. Kathy hadn't said anything was wrong. She'd been acting normal, but now that I thought about it, maybe a little too normal. The kind of normal that felt forced, like someone going through the motions. Still, I didn't want to overthink it. "Yeah, I will," I said, pushing myself off the couch. "I'm probably just being paranoid. Anyway, I'm going to head out. I'll catch up with you later this week." Bradley gave me a nod as he stretched again, reaching for the remote. "All right, man. Say hi to your folks for me." I grabbed my jacket, feeling that familiar unease creep in again. I shook it off and headed out the door, giving Bradley a quick wave. As I walked to my car, I glanced at my phone, no new messages from Kathy. Sliding into the driver's seat, I started the engine, the soft hum filling the silence. The streets were quiet, the late afternoon sun hanging low in the sky, casting long shadows across the road. As I drove, the strange feeling in my gut only grew stronger. It wasn't like I hadn't been to my parents' place unannounced before. My mom always loved surprise visits, fussing over me like I was still her little boy. Dad would pretend to grumble about it, but would inevitably offer me a beer before the end of the evening. It was comforting, familiar, but today felt different. I glanced at the empty passenger seat, my thoughts drifting to Kathy. We'd been married for 12 years, and while things had never been perfect, they'd been good. Lately, though, she seemed distant, more absorbed in her own world. She didn't smile as much, didn't laugh at my jokes like she used to. And that shopping trip today, it just felt odd. Maybe it was the fact that she hadn't mentioned it until this morning, or maybe it was the way she rushed out the door. I shook my head, trying to push the thoughts away. "You're just being stupid," I muttered to myself. "She's out with her friends, doing normal stuff. Stop overthinking it." The drive was short, but my mind kept racing. As I pulled into my parents' driveway, I couldn't shake the growing unease. The familiar garden greeting me like an old friend. The smell of gardenias, my mother's pride and joy, filled the air. It was a comfort, a reminder of home, but today something felt wrong. The front door was ajar. That wasn't normal. My dad was obsessive about locking the house, even if he was just in the backyard. I frowned but brushed off the unease. Maybe they had guests. Still, the quiet made me hesitate for a moment before stepping out of the car. I walked up the driveway, pushing the door open a little wider as I stepped inside. The familiar creak of the wooden floor greeted me as I entered the hallway. "Mom? Dad?" I called out, my voice bouncing off the walls. No answer. It was odd, but again, I figured maybe they were just outside or busy. As I took a step further in, I heard voices, low and murmuring, coming from the kitchen. My ears perked up. I recognized the voices immediately. It was my mother and Kathy. I stopped dead in my tracks, confusion washing over me. Why was my wife here? I hadn't even told her I was planning to come by. I crept closer to the doorway, leaning slightly around the corner to catch their conversation. "Mom, your lover's Johnson is so amazing." Kathy's voice came through clearly, a casual tone as if she were discussing the weather. My heart stopped. I blinked, trying to process what I had just heard. Did she just say lover? My head spun, but before I could react, Kathy's voice continued. It's so huge, and I can handle it very well. Of course, better than your loser son. Thanks for sharing him with me. Next time, he wants you to join with us. We can have so much fun. My blood ran cold. Every word hit me like a slap to the face. I stood frozen just outside the kitchen, my mind racing to make sense of what I was hearing. This couldn't be real. It was some sick joke, some horrible misunderstanding. But then my mother spoke. That's a great idea, sweetie. How about tomorrow? She said, her voice light, almost laughing. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, so loud I thought they might hear it. I wanted to barge in, to demand an explanation, but my legs wouldn't move. My body was in shock, stuck between fight and flight. Then, Kathy spoke again. Of course I'll be there. We should plan something special for tomorrow. Tomorrow. They were already planning their next encounter. My stomach churned, nausea rising in my throat as the weight of their betrayal crashed over me. My wife, my mother, and some man I didn't even know about, all conspiring behind my back. The woman I had loved and trusted, the woman who had raised me, laughing about it together. I took a step back, the floor creaking under my weight. Panic surged through me, and I held my breath, hoping they hadn't heard. I didn't know what I'd do if they came out and saw me standing there, hearing everything. But the voices in the kitchen continued, oblivious to my presence. I needed to leave. Carefully, I retraced my steps, moving as silently as possible. My heart raced, my mind screaming at me to run, to get out of there before I broke down. I reached the front door, stepping outside into the cool air, but I couldn't breathe. My chest felt tight, my hands trembling as I gripped the door frame for support. This couldn't be happening. Not like this. I stood there for a moment, staring at the open road in front of me, trying to calm the storm in my mind. I wanted to scream, to smash something, but I couldn't make a sound. I felt hollow, as if something had been ripped out of me. I made my way back to my car, every step feeling heavier than the last. My hands were shaking as I fumbled with the door handle. Somehow, I got inside, slamming the door behind me. I sat there for a few minutes, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I tried to breathe, tried to think rationally, but there was nothing rational about this. Everything I had known, everything I had trusted, was a lie. My mother, the woman who had cared for me my whole life, was laughing about sleeping with some man and sharing him with my wife. My wife, the woman I thought loved me, had just confirmed she thought of me as nothing more than a loser. A broken laugh escaped my throat, though it sounded more like a sob. How had I been so blind? How had I not seen the signs? The late nights, the girls' trips, the way Kathy had grown distant over the last year. And my mother, she had always been controlling, but this was on another level. I started the car, the engine roaring to life, but I didn't drive. I couldn't. Where would I even go? My hands trembled on the wheel as I stared out the windshield, my mind racing through the events of the last few minutes. My life had been shattered in a matter of seconds. I thought about confronting them, about storming back into the house and demanding an explanation. But what would that accomplish? They had already made their feelings clear. I was nothing to them. A part of me wanted to scream, to throw the car into gear and drive straight through the front door, but instead I just sat there. I let the numbness wash over me. There was no point in confronting them. Nothing I could say would change what I had just heard. Without thinking, I shifted the car into reverse, backing out of the driveway slowly. My hands were still shaking, but I forced myself to focus on the road. I couldn't stay here. I couldn't face them. Not now. Not ever. As I pulled away from the house, my entire world in pieces, I realized there was no going back. My life as I knew it was over. Kathy informed she is going for a friend's place tonight. That night, I didn't sleep. The clock on the wall seemed to mock me as its hands ticked forward, minute after minute, hour after hour. I couldn't bring myself to move from the spot I'd sunk into on the couch, staring blankly at the wedding photos on the mantel. Kathy and I, smiling, happy. At least I thought we were. Now those smiles felt like a cruel joke, another lie I had believed. The house was eerily quiet. only the occasional creak of the floorboards under my weight breaking the silence. My mind was racing, going over the conversation I'd overheard at my parents' house, trying to find some explanation, some way it could be a misunderstanding. But there was none. The words had been too clear, too brutal. Around midnight, I made a decision. I couldn't stay here. Not in this house, not in this life. I stood up slowly, like a man dragging himself from a grave, and headed to the bedroom. My hands were numb as I grabbed a suitcase from the closet and began packing. Jeans, shirts, underwear, nothing special, just the basics. My fingers brushed against the edge of my wedding ring as I zipped up the bag. I hesitated, then pulled the ring off. It felt like it burned my skin as I placed it gently on the kitchen counter, its metallic gleam catching the soft light from the window. I stared at it for a long moment before turning away, as if that little piece of metal had become toxic. I left without a note. No goodbye, no explanation. I couldn't face them, Kathy, my mother, or even myself. There were no words left to say. I stepped out into the cold night, the suitcase clutched tightly in my hand, and walked away from everything I knew. The door closed behind me with a soft click, sealing away the life I had once known. I drove without a destination in mind. The city streets were quiet, barely anyone out at this hour. The lights from the buildings blurred together as I sped through the roads, heading nowhere. My phone buzzed once, but I didn't check it. I already knew it was Kathy, or maybe my mother. Either way, I wasn't ready to hear their voices. By the time the sun started creeping over the horizon, I had made up my mind. I wouldn't go back. I wouldn't even try to salvage what was left of my life. There was nothing left to save. I pulled over at a gas station, found a map inside, and picked a city at random. A new start, somewhere far away. The next few days passed in a blur. I quit my job over the phone, citing personal reasons. No one really questioned it. I canceled the lease on the house, forwarded my mail to a P.O. box I set up in the new city, and changed my phone number. I didn't leave any traces behind, nothing for anyone to follow. For 3 years, I built a new life. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I found a small apartment, got a new job doing warehouse work. Something mindless that kept me busy but didn't demand too much from me emotionally. The people I met were kind, but I kept them at arm's length. I wasn't ready to let anyone in again. I told myself I was moving on, that I had left the past behind. For a while it worked. The pain dulled, becoming something more like a distant memory, a scar I could ignore most days. I kept my head down, focused on work, and avoided any reminders of the life I had left behind. Then one day, 3 years later, everything unraveled again. It was a normal Tuesday, or as normal as any day had become for me. I'd just gotten home from a shift at the warehouse, my body sore from the heavy lifting, when I heard a knock on the door that echoed through my empty apartment, pulling me out of my thoughts. I wasn't expecting anyone, especially not at this hour. I hesitated before opening the door, unsure of who would be standing on the other side. But when I did, I found myself staring into a pair of hollow eyes I hadn't seen in 3 years. It was Kathy. She looked like a ghost, barely recognizable. Her once vibrant blonde hair was gone, replaced by a shiny bald scalp that reflected the dim hallway light. Her skin was pale, almost gray, stretched tightly over her fragile frame. Her teeth, her perfect white smile, had been replaced by a toothless, sagging mouth that struggled to form words. "Jeremy," she whispered, her voice hoarse and weak, as if every syllable took tremendous effort. "I need to talk to you." For a moment, I just stood there, frozen. Every instinct told me to slam the door in her face, to send her away without a second thought. She had no right to show up here after everything that had happened, after everything she had done. But something about her hollow cheeks, her sunken eyes, stopped me. Curiosity, perhaps, or maybe it was pity. I wasn't sure. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside and let her in. Kathy shuffled inside, her feet dragging as if every step was a battle. She looked around the small apartment, the sterile space that had become my home over the past few years, and collapsed onto the couch like a rag doll. Her frail body sunk into the cushions, her breathing shallow, labored. "I have cancer," she said bluntly, without even looking at me. Her voice was flat, emotionless, as if the words had lost all meaning to her. I don't have long. I stayed silent, my arms crossed over my chest, watching her. I wanted to feel something, anger, disgust, maybe even sympathy, but instead I felt nothing. The betrayal she had dealt me had hollowed me out, left me numb. Kathy glanced up at me, her sunken eyes pleading for something I wasn't ready to give. "There's so much you don't know about what happened after you left," she said, her voice trembling slightly now. "I know I don't deserve your sympathy, Jeremy. I know I've lost any right to ask you for anything. But before I die, I need to tell you the truth." I clenched my jaw, refusing to let her words affect me. "The truth? You want to talk about the truth now?" I shook my head, the bitterness I'd buried for so long beginning to rise. "You lied to me for years, Kathy. I heard everything. I know what you did." She winced at the harshness in my voice, but she didn't back down. "You don't know everything," she said, her voice cracking. "It wasn't just an affair, Jeremy. It wasn't what you think. I didn't say anything. I wasn't sure I wanted to hear more, but something in her eyes made me stay. There was a desperation there, something raw and real. I could tell this wasn't just another lie. She was here to confess." Kathy took a shaky breath, her hands trembling in her lap. "Your mom and her lover. They did things to me, Jeremy. They used me. They manipulated me. I was too blind, too stupid to see it, but they took advantage of me from the start." My chest tightened as I heard those words. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice low, struggling to contain the anger bubbling beneath the surface. Tears welled up in Kathy's eyes, spilling down her pale cheeks as she continued. "After you left, everything got worse. Your mom's lover. He turned on me. He abused me, Jeremy. Physically, emotionally, in every way possible. They controlled every aspect of my life. When I tried to leave, they threatened me, blackmailed me with everything I had done. The walls of my apartment seemed to close in around me as the weight of Kathy's words sank in. My mother had been lying to me for my entire life. The man she had shared her bed with wasn't just some lover, but my biological father. My heart pounded in my chest, my pulse quickening as the full scope of the betrayal hit me like a tidal wave. Everything I thought I knew about my family had been a lie. I stared at Kathy, still sitting on my couch, her frail body trembling from the weight of her confession. She wiped her tear-streaked face, her hands shaking as she struggled to find the right words. "They manipulated both of us, Jeremy," she said, her voice hoarse, barely above a whisper. "I was blind to it for so long, but it's true. Your whole life, everything has been a lie." I shook my head, unable to process what she was saying. My mother, the woman who had raised me, who had been there for me in every moment of my life. She had orchestrated all of this? She had betrayed me, not just with Kathy, but for my entire existence? "No," I muttered, more to myself than to Kathy. "This can't be real. You're lying." Kathy flinched, her eyes wide and pleading. "I wish I was. I wish it was some sick joke, but it's not. Your mom, she knew the whole time. He's your real father, Jeremy." I stumbled back, feeling the ground shift beneath my feet. I had to sit down, but the couch felt too close to her, so I dropped into the armchair on the opposite side of the room. I could still hear Kathy's breathing, shallow and uneven, but my own thoughts drowned out any noise she made. How did you find out?" I asked, my voice hollow. Kathy closed her eyes for a moment, steadying herself before she spoke. "After you left, things got worse. Your mom's lover, he became more controlling, more violent. He didn't care about keeping up appearances anymore. He would talk openly, brag about the things he had done. One night, he was drunk, and he let it slip about being your father." My heart raced, and a sick feeling twisted in my stomach. And my mom? She knew? She knew and let him. She let him do all of this. Kathy nodded, tears streaming down her face again. "She didn't just let it happen, Jeremy. She was part of it. She encouraged it. They both enjoyed having that control over us, over everyone. I didn't realize how deep it went until it was too late." The bile rose in my throat as she spoke, the horrifying reality of it all making me feel physically ill. I stood up abruptly, pacing the room, trying to wrap my head around everything she was saying. Every step felt heavy, like I was walking through quicksand. I can't believe this, I muttered under my breath. This is insane. Kathy watched me silently, her eyes filled with regret. I know it's hard to believe, Jeremy. I know it's too much, but I had to tell you. I couldn't go on without you knowing the truth. I stopped pacing and turned to face her, my fists clenched at my sides. Why now, Kathy? Why are you telling me this now, after all these years, after everything that happened? She looked down at her hands, her fingers absent-mindedly tracing the scars on her arms. Because I'm dying, she said quietly. I don't have long left, and I didn't want to leave this world without telling you what really happened. You deserve to know the truth. I swallowed hard, the weight of her words sinking in. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to lash out, to scream at her for keeping this from me for so long. But another part of me felt something I hadn't expected, pity. Kathy was dying, and this was her way of trying to make amends. I don't know what you expect me to do with this information, I said, my voice thick with emotion. You dropped this bomb on me, and then what? What am I supposed to do? I don't expect anything, she replied, her voice soft but steady. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I've hurt you in ways I can never take back. But I wanted you to understand that I wasn't just some willing participant in all of this. I was a victim too. We both were. I clenched my fists, trying to keep my emotions in check. You had a choice, Kathy. You could have stopped. You could have come to me, told me the truth back then. Instead, you stayed with him. You kept this going. Her face crumpled, and she let out a sob, her body shaking with the force of it. I was scared, Jeremy. I was terrified. They had so much control over me, over everything. I didn't know how to escape. And by the time I realized how far it had gone, it was too late. I let her words hang in the air, my mind reeling. This twisted revelation, this nightmare, had been unfolding long before I ever knew about it. And now, I was left to pick up the pieces of a life that had never been real in the first place. I don't know if I can ever forgive you, I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. Or my mother, or anyone involved in this sick game. But I'm not going to let them break me. I won't let them win. Kathy nodded, tears still streaming down her face. I understand. I never expected forgiveness, Jeremy. I just needed you to know. The silence between us stretched on, heavy and suffocating. I stared at the floor, my mind racing with everything I had just learned. My mother, my real father, Kathy, my entire world had been turned upside down, and I had no idea how to move forward. But one thing was clear, I couldn't go back. Not to my mother, not to the life I had once known. That part of my life was dead, buried along with the lies that had sustained it. Now it was time to figure out how to live without them. I stared at Kathy, her frail, ghostly figure slumped on the couch, her chest heaving with labored breaths. In the past, I would have felt pity, maybe even sorrow for what she had become, for what she claimed to have suffered. But now, after everything I had heard, after every lie, every betrayal, I felt nothing. The woman sitting in front of me was a stranger, a person I no longer recognized or cared for. As she sat there, sniffling and wiping away tears that no longer moved me, I realized something. I had the upper hand. For the first time since this nightmare had begun, I was in control. Kathy, my mother, the man who called himself my father, they had stripped me of everything. My life, my dignity, my peace. But now, they were weak, broken, and exposed. And I was free. You know, Kathy, I said, rising slowly from my chair. I listened to your story. I heard every word. But do you know what I'm thinking right now? She looked up at me with wide, desperate eyes, her breath catching in her throat. What? She whispered, her voice trembling. I'm thinking about how none of this changes anything. Not for you. Not for me. I walked closer to her, each step measured calm. My words were cold, deliberate. You made your choices. You were complicit in all of this, no matter how much you want to paint yourself as the victim now. Kathy flinched, her body shrinking further into the couch as if she could make herself disappear. Jeremy, please. I was scared. I didn't know how to get out. Spare me the excuses. I interrupted, my voice harsh. You stayed. You chose them over me. And now, you want forgiveness? After everything? Her lip trembled, but she couldn't respond. There was nothing left for her to say. She knew the truth just as well as I did. She didn't deserve forgiveness. Not from me. Not from anyone. I lost everything because of you. I continued, pacing the small room, feeling the heat of my anger rise. Because of my mother, her lover, and you. I left my life behind. I lost my father, the man who raised me, the only man I thought I could trust. And you think showing up here, looking like death itself, is enough to wipe the slate clean? Tears streamed down her face, but they didn't affect me. Not anymore. I'm sorry, Jeremy, she choked out. I am. I know I can never make up for it, but I had to tell you. I had to make things right before it's too late. I stopped pacing and stood directly in front of her, towering over her fragile form. Too late, I scoffed. Kathy, it was too late the moment you decided to betray me. It was too late the moment you crawled into bed with that man. You were never going to make things right. This, I gestured to her pathetic state, this doesn't absolve you. It just makes you pitiful. Her body shook with sobs, her head hanging low. I don't expect you to forgive me, she whispered, her voice cracking. I just wanted you to know. I'm sorry. I tilted my head, studying her. Sorry doesn't change anything, Kathy. Sorry won't give me back the life I lost. It won't erase the pain, the betrayal, the disgust I feel when I think about what you did. She lifted her head, meeting my eyes with a mixture of desperation and despair. I know that. But I'm dying, Jeremy. I don't have much time left. Please, if nothing else, just let me die knowing I told you the truth. A cruel smile tugged at the corner of my lips. You think you get to decide how this ends? Her face paled even more, if that was possible, her eyes widening in fear. What do you mean? I leaned in close, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper. You think I'm going to let you die with a clear conscience? That I'll just forgive you, let you walk out of here like some tragic figure who's paid the price? She blinked, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. Jeremy, No, I said, cutting her off. I won't forgive you. In fact, I hope you suffer, Kathy. I hope you feel every ounce of pain that I've felt. You deserve that much. She gasped, her hands trembling as they clutched the edge of the couch. Jeremy, please don't do this. Do what? I asked, straightening up, my voice icy. I'm not going to do anything, Kathy. Your fate is sealed. You'll die soon enough, and when you do, I hope the weight of what you've done drags you down into whatever hell awaits you. Kathy's face crumpled as sobs racked her body, but I didn't care. I was done with her tears, her excuses, her pathetic attempts to gain my sympathy. I walked to the door, opened it wide, and turned to face her one last time. Goodbye, Kathy. Her eyes widened in disbelief, her mouth opening to say something, but no words came out. And don't worry, I added, my voice dripping with venom. Your death won't be the end of this. They'll pay too. My mother, her lover. They'll all get what's coming to them. With that, I stepped aside, gesturing toward the open door. Get out. Kathy hesitated, staring at me with a mixture of fear and sadness. But after a moment, she stood on shaky legs and shuffled toward the door, her head hung low. As she passed me, I caught a glimpse of the broken woman she had become, a shell of the person I once knew. But I felt nothing. As she crossed the threshold, I slammed the door behind her, the sound reverberating through the empty apartment. For a moment, I stood there, breathing heavily, the adrenaline still coursing through my veins. I had waited years for this moment, for the chance to take back control, and now I had it. They thought they had broken me, but they were wrong. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The nuclear fallout was just starting. The day after Kathy left my apartment for good, I wasted no time. I sat down with the stack of papers and files I had gathered over the past few weeks. Everything Kathy had told me running through my mind. The betrayal, the lies, the years of manipulation, it all boiled down to one thing: revenge. Cold, calculated revenge. I called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but a ruthless one, someone who knew how to exploit every weakness. The kind of lawyer who could turn a case inside out and make sure that no stone was left unturned. This wasn't about money. It was about making them pay in every possible way. I was done being a victim. "Jeremy, we have a solid case here," my lawyer, Karen, said, glancing up from the mountain of evidence I had provided. "If everything checks out, we can bring criminal charges, civil suits, everything. They'll lose everything." "Good," I replied, leaning back in my chair, my face expressionless. "I want them ruined. Both of them." Karen nodded. "You're ready for the storm this'll bring? This is going to get ugly, Jeremy." Publicly. I stared out the window, the skyline of the city feeling distant, as if it belonged to someone else. They started this war. I'm just finishing it. We began the legal proceedings the next day. The lawsuit was thorough, precise. I didn't hold back on the accusations: financial fraud, manipulation, coercion, emotional abuse. Everything Kathy had confessed to me was in there, along with the damning evidence of their affair, the money they had siphoned from my family, and the web of lies they had spun. My mother and her lover had lived too long in the shadows. It was time to drag them into the light. Within weeks, the media had caught wind of the case. Headlines splashed across newspapers and websites, describing the scandal in lurid detail. "Prominent family torn apart by dark secrets," one headline read. Another blared, "Lover's betrayal leads to courtroom battle." I watched from a distance, far removed from the chaos, as the world tore apart the lives of the people who had destroyed mine. I found a twisted satisfaction in the way the story unfolded. Reporters hounded my mother and her lover wherever they went. Their faces were splashed across TV screens, social media, everywhere. My mother, once the pride of our small town, was now a pariah, her name synonymous with disgrace. Her lover, a man who had always been careful to stay in the shadows, was dragged into the spotlight as a predator, exposed for all to see. His business collapsed, his reputation shattered beyond repair. The court hearings were brutal. I didn't attend most of them. My lawyer handled that, but I kept close tabs on every word, every motion filed. I didn't need to see their faces. I knew the damage was done. One morning, as I sat in a cafe reading the latest article on the case, my phone buzzed. It was Karen. "It's over," she said. "We won." I set the cup of coffee down slowly, letting her words sink in. "What happens now? They'll lose everything. Your mother is facing prison time for fraud and conspiracy. Her lover, well, he's in even deeper trouble. Multiple charges. He won't see the outside of a cell for a long time." "Good," I said, a cold satisfaction curling through my veins. "Make sure they know it's just the beginning." Karen paused, her tone softening. "Are you sure you want to keep going after this? You've won, Jeremy. You've destroyed them." I stared out the window, the world bustling on the other side of the glass. People walking, living their lives, oblivious to the storm that had just passed in mine. I'm sure there's no forgiveness for what they did. That night, I sat in my apartment, the victory fresh in my mind. It wasn't a celebration. It was more like a release. The weight of years of deception had been lifted, but not entirely. There was still work to be done. A few weeks later, I got a call from the prison where my mother had been taken. She wanted to see me. "Tell her no," I said flatly, hanging up without another thought. I had no desire to see her rotting away in a cell, pleading for my forgiveness. Forgiveness wasn't in my vocabulary anymore. I had been kind once, understanding even, but they had killed that part of me. As for her lover, the man who had sown so much destruction, I didn't need to do anything further. His life was over. His reputation was gone. His freedom stripped away. And I knew he would spend his remaining years looking over his shoulder, waiting for the inevitable consequence of the life he had led. Kathy never contacted me again after that day. I heard from mutual acquaintances that she was fading, her illness progressing rapidly. She had made her bed, and now she was lying in it. I didn't wish her ill. I simply didn't wish her anything at all. She had become a ghost of my past, just like my mother, just like her lover. In the end, I was the one who walked away free. I built a new life, far removed from the wreckage they had tried to drag me into. I didn't need forgiveness, and I didn't need closure. Their suffering, their downfall, that was enough. A few months after the dust had settled, I stood in the quiet of my new home, far from the city, far from everything. The air was clean, the skies clear. The chaos was behind me, and for the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. They had their lives to contend with, their guilt, their shame, their broken bodies and broken souls. But me? I had something they could never take away again. Freedom. And that was enough.